column, this is the same format as the notes at DB column, so that starts with the first column as 1. Okay, let's go try that out. I'll preview it. So you see that my list box, before I added that 6, some other value, I have my combo boxes, and I have my dynamically computed combo boxes and list boxes too, and here's where I added the states here in the very bottom. So you see that went and got the column of information from the view. Okay, let's talk about radio buttons, and you can set these up horizontally or vertically, and the correct name for this control is the radio button group control. If you're using 850, you may not see this. You will probably only see a radio button or a checkbox control, and you don't want to use that. We'll talk more about that in a second. So we drag the radio box or the radio button group control to where we want it, and we set the properties. Again, there's a values tab that we'll define. And we have to bind it to a data source in our document and set up our values. Checkboxes are the same way. You can't have a single choice checkbox. And again, we drag that over, bind it to our data, and set up the values tab. Okay, so I mentioned before, if you're using a older version of Notes, you may not have the radio button group or checkbox group. They initially came out with something called a radio button control and a checkbox control, which were pretty much useless. But those still appear in your palette. You probably see those in your palette in Designer. So go to Preferences by, let me switch over to Designer. If you go to File, Preferences, Domino Designer, expand that and go to Palette. Under Core Controls, you want to turn off the radio button and make sure the radio button group is checked on. Same thing with the checkbox. Check that off and make sure checkbox group is checked on. When you do that, then in your core controls, you'll have the checkbox group and the radio button group, and you won't have the radio button or checkbox control, which you shouldn't be using. And that was in 852 that those were added. One word about versions. I know many people in the Domino community don't upgrade too quick. In the XPages world, you want to be on the latest version. There's a lot of functionality that is added to XPages with each point release. So, you know, when 853 comes out next month, October 6th, I think it is, or October 4th, 853 will be out. Don't wait a year to upgrade. There's a lot of new functionality in there, and a lot of things got fixed. So you definitely want to try to be more on the bleeding edge than wait several releases. So let's go look at the checkbox and radio boxes real quick. Okay, so we just have an example of some checkboxes and radio buttons in different formats. I'll preview that. And you see that, you know, we have horizontal and vertical layouts and checkboxes as well. Okay, so that brings us to the last activity. Again, I'll explain that, but you can do that on your own. We have about 10 minutes left in the webinar, so we're going to go through a couple more things and take some Q&A. But the activity is the last one in Module 2, and you're going to go create a XPage that when you create a new customer, you have some drop-down boxes and radio buttons and checkboxes. Or if we open up an existing customer, you would see those values as well, and we can go into edit mode and change some of those values. Okay, let me whet your appetite a little bit by looking at some things you can do with XPages that are a little more advanced, but these are all techniques that we do explain in our XPages courses, and things that are not hard to do once you get a little XPages experience under your belt. The first one is kind of a neat one. You can combine, and all these demonstrations are in your course if you want to try them for yourself or show your boss, hey, look what XPages can do. Okay, so we have a view control, and so far in this the demos we've been doing, when you open up a document, you click on a document in the view control, it opens up a new XPage. Well, here we keep the view control and the document on the same XPage, and we can even go into edit mode and change the values and save our changes, and those changes will be reflected. So this is a nice little way, kind of a nicer user interface. Your users aren't constantly moving from different pages. They can do everything on one web page, both viewing the customers and editing or viewing the details for a specific customer. Okay, another nice technique for Domino programmers probably been wanting to do this for years, and that is combining information from two different views. So what I have here is an XPage. The first three columns are from one view. The last column is using an ActDB lookup to another view and pulling in all the customers for this particular sales rep. So here we actually have, in the view control, we're actually doing an ActDB lookup, which is something that couldn't be done in traditional Notes and Domino development. Okay, I'll show one more. And someone asked before about charting. And one of the things that we couldn't do before was charting in the Notes client. So first I'll show it in the web browser. And these are using the included Dojo controls. So these, all the software, everything you need to do this is in the Domino Designer and Domino Server. You don't have to add anything special. And what this will do is show a chart, in this case a pie chart. And this pie chart's pulling the data from this view control that is actually on the same page. So this is in the web browser, but also we can view this in the Notes client. So here I'm in the Notes client, and now I have charting that I can use in my Notes client applications, and I don't have to add any special software. Okay, a little bit about skills, and being TLCC, we're going to talk about the skills in terms of our courses, but just wanted to give you an idea of the skills you need to get into XPages. First of all, XPages, while they are new, it is an extension of our Domino design capabilities. So they still use, obviously, forms and views. So you need to understand Domino design. So if you haven't, for the 4% or a small number of you that were not Notes and Domino developers, you can't jump right into XPages. You need to understand what makes up a Domino application in terms of forms and views. Next, we suggest you have a good knowledge of the Domino object model. And you can get this through LotusScript. Many of you probably already program in LotusScript, and you know the Domino object model. Or you can get it through Java. And if you don't know the Domino object model yet, and your goal is to work with XPages, you may want to learn the Domino object model using Java. And we do have courses that will teach you Java programming as well as teach you the Domino object model as you learn Java. Same thing with LotusScript. Then you should learn JavaScript. And if you know JavaScript already from a different programming language or working with Domino Forms, that's fine. If not, we have a course for that. And then TLCC does have 2 courses on XPages, developing XPages or XPages 2. We have these in both a self-paced format. You can go at your own pace. We also have an instructor-led online class starting September 20th. That's next week.
I have a question from Mark. If you bind a control to a field, does it bring forward any formulas you have, like DB lookup? Now, not by default, but there is a property on the XPage that you can set, which is to compute with form. And then some of the things that are in the form, some of your formulas, like your validation and translation formulas, will be brought forward. However, I'm not a big fan of this technique. It can introduce some surprising results. So I personally like to convert those so that you know, any sort of computation, any sort of validation, translation, conversion of data, if you will, is done right in the XPage design. But it is doable, and that's the compute with form property. That is not the default, but you can explore that and see if that helps you out.
Thomas asked, can I bind subform fields along with the related form fields? And I believe that, yes, those do show up on the when you do the binding. I'd have to double check that, but I think they do.
Sachin asks, with XPages, which do you suggest, the Dojo toolkit or the jQuery toolkit? Personally, I suggest the Dojo toolkit because it is automatically available to you. So the Dojo toolkit is available with Domino Designer and the Domino server as well. You don't have to do anything to enable it, to access the library. It's automatically available. Any other toolkit, jQuery is very popular. Any other toolkit, you do have to, either make that available through your Domino server or within your application. But for that reason, for the fact that it's already natively available, I suggest the Dojo toolkit.
Okay, Paul, we have a question from, I'm going to mispronounce your name, I'm sorry, Abhinav. How do you run a web query open or a web query save agent on an XPage for a form? And the answer is, quick answer is you don't. But the good news is that there is a way to call agents from server-side JavaScript. And you can pass in a document context, which is a in-memory document that has data that you want to send to the agent. So what you can do is rewrite your web query open or web query save agents to remove all that presentation that you had in there, the hard-coded, HTML that you probably have, and pass data back and forth through the document context back to the XPage to then handle after the web query open or web query save is run. Also, there are events on the document data source that can run. These would be server-side JavaScript, so you would have to rewrite those to server-side JavaScript. But those events would run when the document data source is opened or saved. So there are several ways to do that depending on how much rewriting of code you wanted to do to server-side JavaScript.
A question from Mel, are all TLCC courses for Notes Domino available as online courses? Really not online. You certainly download them from our site when you purchase a TLCC course, but everything runs locally, much like the Intro to XPages course, that free course that's available. So if you haven't, certainly request and download and try out that free Intro to XPages course. That's how we deliver all of our courses. So all of the data